One. Good evening. Thank you for coming to the forum. This is what we call an alliance between the NAACP, the League of Women Voters, and the Committee of 100. We wanted to make sure that you all had an opportunity to meet, ask questions, and talk to the people that were running to represent you in Richmond. We have, I hope that most of you went online and put in questions, but if you did not put in questions, please, on the table at the back, there are cards and pens. You can write a question on there and drop it in the box, and we'll see if we can get it to the moderator. So please do that. Also, over at the table, we have voter registration. We have memberships for the NAACP and the Committee of 100. So if you're interested in joining either of those groups, please go and do so. I would like to thank all the candidates for joining us today. You all can actually have a seat. You will be introduced by the moderator as soon once complete. This is just a welcome. I am here to introduce you to our alliance group that helped to pull this together. My name is E.J. Scott, and I'm the chair of the NAACP's Political Action Committee, and I'm the vice chair of the NAACP. We worked with our president, Cozy Bailey, who is president of the NAACP. We had Ann Wheeler of the Committee of 100, president of the Committee of 100. And we have two Carols from the League of Women Voters. We have the immediate past president, Carol. And Carol Proven, right here. And we're going to start out with Cozy Bailey, if you would come to the
Thank you, EJ. Let's give EJ a hand. As you might imagine, there's quite a bit of logistics that takes place in putting something like this together, and I said that they carried me along with them, but EJ, Carol, and Ann, and they just did a tremendous job, and so thank you all, ladies, for helping put this together. We are in a historic building this evening. Historic because, counter to some thoughts, history didn't change, but history was rectified when a couple of years ago, this school was renamed for a current resident of Prince William County, a longtime resident of Prince William County, and we would be remiss if we didn't recognize the fact that Dr. George M. Hampton is with us tonight. Please stand, George. It always gives me pleasure to recognize George. He's one of my mentors and my fraternity brother, so thank you, George. So I won't be before you long. I just did want to give some words of welcome to the candidates. We appreciate you coming out and fulfilling your responsibility, actually, to the community and letting them know how you feel on the issues. And that's what this is all about. It's all about engaging at every opportunity that you have, and again, letting your constituency, your potential constituencies know, this is what I think you think, And if there's something different, please tell me. And so you get all three opportunities this evening. For that, we're very grateful and thankful. I want to remind, as everyone knows, that League of Women Voters and Committee of 100 have the moniker of being nonpartisan. And I just compelled to tell you, remind you, that the NAACP also is nonpartisan. We do not endorse candidates, but we do serve the community from our particular vantage point, and that's usually social activism. And so I just want to remind you all, you have three nonpartisan organizations who have come together to pull this off. So with that, we have been allowed to begin this meeting in the way that the NAACP begins their meeting. So if you all would center yourselves for a moment and bow your heads and join me in a moment of prayer. Lord, we thank you for this evening. We thank you that you have brought us here this evening to do the civic duties, God, that you ordained when you gave us this form of government. We thank you for the blessings that you have given to this country. We thank you for the blessings that you continue to bestow upon this great Commonwealth of Virginia. And we thank you, Lord, that you continue to smile upon the citizens and the servants of Prince William County, the cities of Manassas and Manassas Park. We're grateful, Father, that these six have taken time out of their much busy schedule, Father, as they are hastening towards that day, on November 7th, to take some time, Father, to spend with the citizens and residents of this county. We pray, Father, that what happens over the next few hours, God, is pleasing to your sight. And we pray that we walk away from here with more clarity and a greater understanding of what we must do with this great, great land that you've given us. We lift you up and we praise your holy name. And it is in that great name that we do pray. Amen. Amen. And now, joining me on the stage will be Ms. Ann Wheeler, the president of the Committee of 100.
So we can also, we're trying to get out of here. Our goal is to get out of here by 9, and so we'll try to keep to that. We're starting a touch late. If you could join me and stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I'm just going to got the task of I'm going to do the electeds who are in the office and in the audience. I'd like to recognize not the ones who are up at the podium, but if I could just recognize some people in the audience, starting with Ruth Anderson, the supervisor from the office, from the Woodbridge District. We have Lily Jesse from the Occoquan District, and also Vice Chair. And last but not least, Jackie Smith, Clerk of the Court. And I'd also like to thank Bill Golden, who is up here. There are a bunch of organizations videotaping and recording, but I'd also like to thank Bill Golden for doing that for the Committee of 100 and the other two groups. So thank you. We will put this online when we get it finished. Thank you. I think that's about it. I will turn it over to someone who is going to introduce the moderator, and we are going to get started.
Thank you all. I know we want to get started, and so I would just like to quickly introduce Dr. Stephen Farnsworth, who is a professor at University of Mary Washington and very well informed on politics and government and candidates and debates. So he will be the moderator, and we will get started first by determining who's going to be first, second, third, and first and second. One first. So, Dr. Farnsworth, thank you very much for being here.
So if you'll give us just a moment to work out the order of the candidates' presentations, and we'll be with you in just a second. 90 seconds. Before we get started, I want the candidates to see we do have warning signals for your time. There's a card when you have 1 minute left, a card for 30 seconds, 20 seconds rather, and then stop. We'll be a little informal here. You can finish your sentence, but don't start a new idea if you don't mind. I want to say a couple of things for the audience about the way that we're going to do this. Because we have a lot of candidates on the stage, we want to make sure that everybody has lots of time to be heard, and that's going to require us to be real strict on the question of no applause or any sort of public engagement with respect to that for each individual remarks or whatever. So anything that you do say could be deducted from the candidate's time that you're supporting. So please, in order to make sure that we can disagree without being disagreeable, we generally do a better job in Virginia than they do in Washington on this score. It's important to recognize that. Each of the candidates will have 2 minutes to answer every question. Every question will be answered by each candidate. There's going to be no rebuttal time. What you want to do, if you find a need to reply the next time through, you can start your next 2 minutes with some rebuttal from that. It's a necessity with the large number of candidates we have here. Before we take the opening statements, though, I would like you to join with me in offering a round of applause to these candidates who are willing to serve. It's a thankless job, and we're fortunate to have people willing to serve in these roles. And so thank you for that. In the order of our opening statements, Delegate Lingenfelter will go first, followed by candidate Guzman and candidate Larson. And then those are the candidates in the 31st district. We'll then have the candidates in the 51st district. Delegate Anderson goes fourth, Ms. Ayala goes fifth, and then Carol Foy goes sixth. She's in the 2nd district. Her opponent wasn't here, and so she ends up at in the 6th slot. So with 2 minutes now for each opening statement, we start with Mr. Lingenfelter.
This election presents us with a distinct choice. Since I was elected in 2001, my focus has been on faith and family and freedom. To attain these goals, I've always followed a legislative discipline by asking myself if policies are good for one, families, small businesses, and constitutional governance. And in all of this, I've ascribed to a fundamental ideal: promise made, promise kept. And in keeping those promises, I think I've accomplished a few things. 16 years of balanced budgets, back-to-back surpluses for the last 2 years. We closed deficits without raising taxes, cut wasteful spending by $7 billion. I audited VDOT, found $1.2 billion that we've put to work on transportation, passed a school security bill to protect our teachers and students from unthinkable violence, and led the way on cleaning up the Chesapeake Bay and pressuring Alexandria from putting raw sewage in the Potomac River, if you can believe it. But my opponent is from a very far left position on these issues, out of the mainstream of Virginia. She wants driver's licenses for people not legally here and supports sanctuary cities. She supports felons' rights for voting, buying a gun, running for office, and sitting on juries. She's proposed spending programs that would bankrupt Virginia in over $6 billion in new spending. She opposed my school security bill, even though Governor McAuliffe signed it into law. She's opposed cooperation with local police and federal authorities to deport criminal gang and drug cartel members. And not with just one, but 2 recent personal bankruptcies, she has not demonstrated the fiscal discipline to be trusted with our tax dollars. Our campaign is focused on mainstream ideas. Hers are on, frankly, more extreme ones. So I look forward to the debate. Thank you very much.
Ms. Guzman, 2 minutes.
name is Elizabeth Guzman. I'm a candidate for the 31st District of the House of Delegates. I've been living in the 31st District for the past 13 years with my husband, Carlos, who's here today, and my 4 children that we have raised in the public school system. I'm originally from Peru. I came to this country as a single mother with my daughter, Pamela, who's 25 now, with a high school diploma and a certificate as a bilingual secretary. At the beginning, like many people, I juggled 3 jobs just to be able to afford a 1-bedroom apartment. But through hard work and dedication, I put myself through college and graduate school, and today I have 2 master's degrees, one in public administration and a second one in social work. I'm a proud public servant. I'm currently working for the City of Alexandria government as a division chief for administrative services for the Department of Community and Human Services, where I oversee the administrative operations of programs that help people in need with mental disabilities, with intellectual disabilities, with substance abuse disorders, and also for senior citizens. I worked before in Fairfax County government, in the Department of Early Childhood Education, and I work in the public school system as well. My experiences assured me that anyone who's willing to sacrifice and work hard in this county will be able to achieve the American dream, and that's why I'm running for office. I'm running for office to protect the American dream of your children and mine. I want to run for office to advocate for all hardworking Virginians, and I want to run for office to make Virginia a more inclusive and welcoming place where diversity is embraced and not disrespected. Thank you.
Again, we're going to ask you to keep the applause to a minimum so we have maximum amount of time for the candidates. Mr. Larson.
Hi, I'm Nathan Larson, and I'm running for delegate on a libertarian platform. Libertarianism is the philosophy of personal and economic liberty. It seeks to harness the power of capitalism to build a safer and more prosperous society. The libertarian agenda is to privatize everything we possibly can, to eliminate all barriers to competition and free enterprise, and to uphold the right of the individual to do as he wishes with his own personal property. In a society based on liberty, we would not have a government that tries to control so many aspects of our lives, and therefore, we would have no need to rely so much on the wisdom of those politicians and bureaucrats who, in their efforts to centrally plan everything, have drafted enough rules and regulations to fill an entire library. Instead, society could evolve more organically in a way that would be flexible enough to meet the unique needs of each individual. Thank you.
Mr. Anderson. 2 minutes.
Well, good evening. It is good to be here tonight, and I wish to first thank the NAACP, the Prince William Committee of 100, and of course the League of Women Voters for sponsoring tonight's discussions. I would also like to thank Ruth for being here with me tonight. Ruth has been my partner in life for 30+ years. Together we wore the Air Force uniform of a great nation for a total of 51 years, and we now serve together in this great calling to public service. 8 years ago, I presented myself as a candidate for the 51st House District and was successful. Over those years, I've knocked on literally tens of thousands of doors. We have replicated that sort of pace during the current campaign cycle. But more importantly, during the non-election years, I have also been in thousands of homes, on their doorsteps, on their living room couches, at their dining room tables, for constituent services. And so I've enjoyed that immensely. What I've learned during that time by listening to these 2 pollsters, located on each side of my head, is simply people are interested in jobs and job creators, the economy and economic development, transportation and education, and that takes their full attention. So I've leaned forward to try to focus on balanced budgets over the last 8 years, responsible spending, and the $132 million budget surplus that we had this year, that I was a part of as a budget appropriator. I was proud of the Virginia Values Veterans Program that has now put 26,000 veterans to work, the Veterans Care Center that will be fielded in Fauquier County. And so 4 years ago, I pledged to be engaged directly with every fiber of my being, and I wish to continue that as part of this great delegation to the Virginia General Assembly. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. How are you? Great. My name is Hala Ayala, and I am the Democratic candidate for the 51st District House of Delegates. I'd like to thank the NAACP, League of Women Voters, and Committee of 100 for hosting this evening, as well as all of you for being here tonight. I'm a lifelong Virginian, homegrown, right in the backyard here of Alexandria, Virginia. Moved to Prince William in 1981, where I watched Prince William evolve. I attended local schools like Elizabeth Bond Elementary, Redland Middle School, and graduated from Woodbridge High School. Go Vikings. No Vikings? Okay. I'm also a cybersecurity specialist formerly with the Department of Homeland Security. Been there for 17 and a half years. I was one of very few women that helped stand up the cyber department within the biggest component of DHS, which is the Coast Guard. That's a mouthful, but I was proud to be a part of that. I pride myself in being an active community member. I stood up the Prince William County National Organization for Women, activism for women and families across the Commonwealth and in Prince William County. I also served at the state level as vice president and currently serve in my second term on Governor McAuliffe's Council for Women. I'm running because Republicans in the General Assembly have taken positions that hurt Virginia and working families. They've defunded Planned Parenthood, denying women receiving preventive care, birth control, or cancer screenings. Stood against Medicaid expansion, where 12,000 Prince William County constituents could receive health care that they need, and 400,000 Virginians. And they chose to fly the flag half-staff in order to shame women who've made a difficult choice to have an abortion. We need a change in leadership. We need representation that adapts to the needs of the 51st District and to Prince William County and the Commonwealth versus being stuck in the past. I want to thank you for this time. Thank you for hosting this event, and hopefully I earn not only your respect, but your vote on November 7th. Thank you.
Good evening. I would like to thank the host of this event, and it's my honor to be here today. My name is Jennifer Carroll Foy, and I'm running for the House of Delegates seat in Prince William and Stafford, which is the 2nd District. So we all know what's at stake on November 7th. And a vote for Jennifer Carroll Foy is a vote to expand Medicaid to the 400,000 Virginians that don't have access to quality health care. It is a vote to increase teacher salaries where they are paid $7,500 less than the national average. And we have hundreds of teacher openings in Prince William and Stafford every single year. It is a vote to improve transportation in Prince William and Stafford and all of Northern Virginia, because no one should be sitting in traffic for 2 hours going 23 miles. Now, a little bit about myself. I am a lifelong Virginian, born and raised here. I moved to Prince William County with my husband, Jeff Boyd. Jeff he works for Potomac High School, and he actually works for the nonprofit called ACTS that housed the homeless population in Prince William and Stafford. So we also live there with my 2 new infant boys, Alex and Xander, so I don't want to forget about them. And as a public defender, I know what it means to protect people's constitutional rights and civil liberties. I represent some of the Commonwealth's most vulnerable citizens on a daily basis: children, people with mental illness, substance abuse issues, and the chronically poor. I know what it means to take the charge to fight as a foster parent for the past 8 years, protecting my foster children who've gone through neglect and abuse, and going to parent-teacher conferences and PTA meetings to ensure that they receive an adequate education. And as one of the first females and African American females to graduate from Virginia Military Institute, I know what it means to take up the fight, to fight for women's access to equal education, opportunities, equal pay for equal work, and reproductive health care. So a vote for Jennifer Carroll Foy is a vote to make sure that democratic ideas and values are executed down in Richmond. Please exercise your vote. Please vote for Jennifer Carroll Foy on November 7th. Thank you.
Just a housekeeping note, Michael McKee, the Republican challenger in the 2nd District, was invited to attend but had a schedule conflict and couldn't join us tonight. We're going to have now a series of questions that are going to candidates. The order of the first set of questions will match the opening statements. And so the Delegate Lingenfelter will go first in the same order. And then the second set of questions will then go to the second person in the list, candidate Ayala, and candidate Guzman, and then candidate Larson, and so on. So that you will always follow the same person, unless you're first. But the last shall be first as we make our way through this. The first question, going first to Delegate Lingenfelter. What are your plans for improving transportation in the Route I-95 corridor? What legislation is needed? 2 minutes, and we'll ask that all the candidates speak from the microphones at the tables. It'll be allow us to go a bit faster with people speaking from their seats. Thank you.
Well, one of the key problems in the transportation corridor of I-95 happens right here in Prince William County. It's right at Occoquan. And I think that Supervisor Anderson and I have spoken about this, and that's where you have that bottleneck, where it comes down from the bridge from 4 lanes to 3 lanes. It's mindless, it's stupid. We need to fix the problem. We've gone to VDOT, we've asked them to look seriously at trying to create a 4th lane. Part of the problem, and I think the supervisors know, is years ago when those sound walls went up, and you have residential areas on either side, it's extremely difficult to find additional space to put in that 4th lane. So I think what we have to do is get VDOT and Transurban to sit down and work cooperatively with the Prince William County Board of County Supervisors so that we can get some priority and a fix to that particular choke point, if you will, on I-95. Now that's not, actually that choke point, if you will, is not in the 31st District. But it affects just about every person in the 31st District that gets on 95, either traveling north or south. So it really needs to get addressed, and I'm hoping that, in fact, we will get some help from VDOT with the county to make it a priority in the coming budget that is before the General Assembly. Now, there's a lot of controversy with HOT lanes. Some people like them, some people hate them. Some people don't want increased tolls. My opponent has made it her position that she does not want increased tolls. She does support increased gas taxes. I would tell you, whether it's gas taxes or tolls, somebody's going to pay for roads. And so I think that it's very important that we look to private-public partnerships to find a way to extend the express lanes, and we're doing that right now south on 95 down to Massaponax. And I hope that we will look to those kind of smart, creative solutions, along with expanding our bus and feeder operations, which are critical to moving people from their homes to places where they can take mass transit north and south accordingly. Thank you.
All right. So first I would like to let you know that Delegate Lingenfelter voted against the 2013 transportation deal that could have brought $350 million for Northern Virginia, $860 statewide, and $300 million for rail studios. So he's responsible for the situation that we are here, and he has neglected this for 16 years. As a commuter, but every day for 20 miles in 95, because I have to commute due to the lack of high-paying jobs here in the area, I would like to clarify that the bottleneck is not only in Occoquan, Mr. Lingenfelter. In the 31st, we do have serious issues of traffic. One is in Miniville Road, where you can spend an hour from going to Cotton Hill up to Miniville and Spriggs roads. We also have an issue on 66, on Spriggs, on 29, and on Fauquier, where many citizens have reached out to you and you've never responded or clarified the situation. I believe that we need to start improving our local transportation system that has been neglected since 1998. We have the same amount of buses, the same amount of buses stop, and our population has grown 3 times. We don't even have a bus service that can bring people to Potomac Mills on Sundays. I believe that if we innovate transportation, that's going to drive the economy of localities, so our state taxes and local taxes could remain the same. After we fix our local transportation system, then we can talk about improving the metro and VRE. And who's going to pay for that? Well, we have to ask Congress and the federal government to put money and allocate money to those areas, because we house many people who work in Fall River and Quantico, and they need to help to improve that system. And we are, by the way, the 3rd worst bottleneck in the country after LA and Los Angeles. And for 16 years, nothing has been done.
Yes.
Again, I need to remind people we need to focus on the time for the candidates. We have so many candidates on the stage, so please leave your applause aside, or the candidate you're supporting will be penalized.
I think for transportation, we should look to the private sector. The private sector, because it's not hampered by so many regulations, this is the public sector, is in a better position to innovate when it comes to coming up with new technology for building highways. I think we can look to the example of private highways like the Dulles Greenway, which is relatively free of congestion, as a good example. And I think that when private companies own the roads, they have an incentive to invest in building quality roads and to keep them free of congestion so that they will get people to continue wanting to drive on those roads and pay those tolls. Another possibility to consider is that we may want to separate the truck traffic from the car traffic on the highways by building separate truckways for the truck traffic. That's an idea that's been proposed. That would allow us to have larger trucks which could move material more efficiently. So those are some ideas for addressing traffic.
Well, without question, the Route 95 corridor is the biggest challenge for us in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and it is in fact the most congested corridor in the country. The difficulty that we have is, as Delegate Lingenfelter cited, is that the highway next down at the 123 exchange down to 3 lanes. It is a horrendous merge that results in a huge backup. Recently, within the last several months, Ruth and I and several others met with Transurban officials to discuss that. And there has been reported in the media that expanding those lanes to 4 lanes would result in what is known as a compensation event, where there would be a charge. Transportation Transurban rather, assures us that that is not the case. And so after we are through with the election process, my intention is for Ruth, myself, and Delegate Scott Survell, who represents that area right there, the intersection of 95 and Route 123, to sit down with Commonwealth Transportation Board officials and our representative on there from Planning District Number 8, Gary Garzinski, and to talk about these in greater depth. It did not score well. I understand it was scored for Prince William on the SMART scale process, and we're going to get smarter about how to do that, because I traveled that corridor for a full 8 years from the Horner Road lot as a slugger to the Pentagon and back in the evening. So I get that it needs significant attention.
Hello. Well, I guess we can all agree we have a traffic problem. I am a professional commuter, I like to say. For 17 and a half years, I traveled up the I-95 corridor, 395, worked within the DMV area, whether it was going to my place of work or other offices in Virginia, Maryland and DC. You know, the traffic congestion has gotten worse. I want to say, just as a working parent, me sitting on the roads for 2.5 hours sometimes builds this angst. We're not able to get home to our children, get home to our families to attend certain activities, or we're rushing, or we're having to take off early from work in order to make it to those specific activities that really are very important. So essentially, it's a quality of life issue for me. I just recently read in the Washington Post that cited that the I-95 corridor is the worst in the country. And if we don't do something about our traffic problems, it's going to cost us roughly $2.3 billion in a decade, in a 10-year span. And I want to say that not only is it costing us money, but it's costing us time with our families and time that we could spend in our communities doing whatever activities we show desire. The one thing I do want to also bring up, as Elizabeth mentioned, is the 2013 Comprehensive Transportation Package. I think it was House Bill 2313, which Delegate Anderson did not support. But these as opportunities for us to look for ways or modules of transportation to alleviate our traffic congestion. So for instance, I would be in support of funding additional funds for PTRC, bringing Metro to Prince William County, or finding ways that we can extend the VRE. For me, it's a quality of life for all Virginians, and also people that work and live in Prince William County. Thank you.
So my resolution for transportation is 3 parts. The first starts with bringing the Metro Blue Line down to Prince William County. And so a lot of people say that's going to be difficult, it can't be done, but that's something they also told Congressman Jerry Connolly, and he was able to fight to get the Metro Silver Line over to Dulles. So I say we need to have those conversations to start the environmental impact studies, the feasibility studies, so these things can happen, because Prince William and Stafford were growing exponentially, and just expanding 95 is not going to be enough. I've already had conversations with VDOT and people on the PRTC boards, and what they tell me is we have to get creative on how we work with commuters in our district and outside of our district. So that would be priority number 1. Now I know that's going to take a bit of time, so in the meantime, I want to fight for more VRE dollars so we can expand our platforms so it can hold more commuters during the rush hour and in the mornings. Also, fighting for more train cars to hold more commuters that's traveling and using VRE as a mode of transportation. And also, getting the PRTC buses to not only stop in Prince William County, but to go down to Stafford, where there are commuter lots being built. And so that would definitely help Stafford residents and get more cars off the road and alleviate a lot of our traffic congestion. So these are the things that I've put in place, the conversations that I'm having, and things that I want to get done as your delegate in the 2nd District.
The first question goes next to candidate Guzman first, then candidate Larson, and so on. The question is, what would you support with respect to redistricting? Would you support a constitutional amendment to provide a fair and transparent redistricting process for 2021? What would you do to prevent racial or partisan gerrymandered districts that could land Virginia in the courts?
I would support redistricting choices. Of course, I'm fully support, because I think all the residents here were sick and tired that the districts are made just so elected officials could keep their offices. So we can wait for new census and have a new redistrict reform in 2021. And when I talk to voters, they just tell me at the doors, I don't even know what congressional district live on now. I was 1, then I was 11, then they changed me to 10th. What are they trying to do? They want to suppress my vote so I don't know exactly who my delegates are and how can I hold them accountable? So yes, we're going to, and I exactly concur with them. We have to make it easy for our residents to cast their vote. I applaud the efforts for Governor McAuliffe to reinstate the voter rights for felons, because that's going to improve our democracy, and your vote is your voice. So I will be in support of redistrict reforms as well. And since I have a few minutes, I would like to remind Mr. Lingenfelter that balancing a budget is part of his job. And if he doesn't balance the budget, and if he doesn't have a surplus, Governor McAuliffe will make sure that he does it by deleting line items, so the balanced budget is in place. As far as giving driver's license to undocumented citizens that he called illegal aliens, that I will have to explain my son what illegal aliens are, because he doesn't have any understanding of that.
The system of districts is inherently flawed. There's no system of redistricting that we can possibly come up with that will be completely proof against gerrymandering. I think the solution that we need to adopt is we need to have a system of proportional representation where you, instead of voting for a candidate, you vote for a party, and then the parties each get allocated a number of seats in the legislature based on the percentage of votes they get. That would be a system where because there wouldn't be districts, there would be no way to gerrymander it.
For you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, not me?
Sorry. Here's where I sit on the issue of redistricting. I believe very strongly, and I don't want to beat around the bush about this, that the founders intended that legislatures were to levy taxes without delegation, and that they were also to redistrict their jurisdictions without delegation. And so I believe very strongly that that job belongs with the legislature. However, I am in favor of stringent guidelines to reduce the partisanship as much as humanly possible. In the states where nonpartisan independent redistricting commissions have been done, they have been done with, based on my reading, with a mixed bag of results. There was a recent study done by the UCLA and I believe Stanford University, I believe, in which they computer modeled redistricting using other models other than humans doing it, and trying to simulate nonpartisan redistricting commissions. The results turned out only moderately improved. This year, though, I carried as co-patron with Delegate Steve Landis of the Shenandoah Valley, who chairs the House Education Committee, a bill to effect a constitutional amendment to dramatically reduce the political considerations so that we would have fewer, in fact, I think there should be no divided precincts, and that like communities should be preserved. It just doesn't make sense to me that the lines between the 1st Congressional District and the 11th Congressional District should lie in the very middle of Lake Ridge.
Well, hopefully my brevity will be rewarded. I'm pretty straightforward when it comes to gerrymandering. I believe that we should have a nonpartisan commission appointed, redrawing our lines to make elections fair and equal for all voters in Virginia and across the nation. That's basically it. I mean, everything Elizabeth's, I'm just joking.
So I support redistricting reform in the form of a constitutional amendment or having an independent, nonpartisan body that does it. It is very difficult to represent people in multiple jurisdictions. It's difficult to say who my constituents are when I have one side of the street, they belong in my district, and on the other side of the street, they do not. They have technology now that can pinpoint how a house will vote, and you can actually be carved out of a district based upon your voting habits. Now, voters should choose their representatives, not representatives choosing their voters. And in order to ensure that that happens, we have to have redistricting reform. So I would support either a constitutional amendment or independent third-party, nonpartisan party or group or committee in charge of redistricting.
couple of things. First of all, just quickly on transportation, I would just point out to Elizabeth that in the time that I've been delegate here, in recent years, we've brought an additional $560 million in funding to Prince William County roads and $72.2 million in Fauquier. That we also have worked very hard to reform transportation systems to include how we pick the kinds of projects and the order in which we do them. The second piece I would point out is that I voted against that transportation bill because it was the wrong formula. And already, just 3 years later, people are clamoring, more money, give us more money. What we should have done is reformed the per gallon tax, the gas tax, to a sales tax and made it level for everybody. But that bill made it higher for Northern Virginia at the expense of our standing with everybody else in the state. I didn't think it was right. On redistricting, I would simply tell you that probably the most important thing to remember is the Obama Justice Department approved the Virginia redistricting plan. And the second piece that I would say to you is Delegate Lionel Spruill. You probably don't know him. He's a senator now, an African-American from Suffolk. He stood up on the House floor, and I'll never forget this. He said, were it not for Republicans having a fair and open process where they were actually talking to members and talking to the public, there would not be as many African Americans in the House caucus as there are today. Because when the Democrats ran the show, trust me, they used African American communities to help elect their traditional politicians in Virginia. They did very, very little to grow the African American representation in the House. And I am proud to have my good friend Luke Torian there, and he certainly is a tower of a guy. I wish he was here tonight, quite frankly. As far as felons are concerned, very irresponsible, and I'll come back and talk about that later.
This question goes first to Mr. Larson. What criminal justice reforms, such as in sentencing, incarceration, and reentry, do you support? What would you propose relating to criminal justice reform?
2 minutes. I think we should switch to a restitution-based system. I think we should have a system where the offender is required to pay the restitution to his victim and that he can earn an early release. This will encourage the offender to engage in training while he's in prison. And I think that there should also be parole bonds, like the same way people can bond out of jail while they're awaiting trial. I think that if someone can post a bond to pay their restitution, that they should be allowed to do that. The result of that will be that those who have family or who are considered a good risk will be able to, that are able to borrow that money. And then their family and friends, they will have a stake in making sure that they stay away from crime in the future, and so that they can pay back that money they owe.
This is most definitely a timely issue. I most certainly believe in forgiveness and redemption. It is part of my belief system. It is part of, regardless what faith system you subscribe to, I think it's a very important part of that faith belief. But I also believe that we don't need to dilute our laws. We need to look at such things, though, in our schools about this phenomenon. It's probably not the best word, of schools to prison pipeline. I think that, in fact, I've been involved with this in several of our schools where I have been consulted by principals or teachers or families wherein an individual, a young person, has prematurely been handed off to the legal system when I believe a school could resolve that problem. So I think here, especially regarding that at the local level, the schools have a leading role to play. Delegate Lingenfelter and I, as part of our House Appropriations Committee's responsibilities last summer, went with the other 20 members of the Appropriations Committee to several state prisons around the Commonwealth to see their programs in action and how they prepare to return their population back to society in a productive capacity. And so there's work that we need to do on this, because while I do not believe in having a system that is just too permissive, I also think that we cannot build more prisons.
Well, I guess this is where we somewhat agree. When we talk about criminal justice reform, the school to prison pipeline, being a PTO president, I had firsthand experience with watching children. If we're talking about expulsion, if we're talking about suspending children, it sets the tone for our young youth. And we can certainly find ways to, in the school system to bring about policies that help our children, especially when infractions have been done or have been caused. Also with, when we talk about marijuana, the decriminalization of marijuana, because it does impact the majority of the lower economic or people of color. A young person's small mistake should not set the tone for their life, impacting them not being able to have a job or opportunities in the future. And so that's pretty much
Great. Okay, this is something I'm really excited about, criminal justice reform. So as a public defender, now, I used to be a magistrate judicial officer, so that's when I worked on the other side with law enforcement as far as doing bond hearings, whether someone would go to jail or not, if there's probable cause to arrest you, so I did that. I saw a disparity in the application of the laws in Virginia, and I thought that, hey, there needs to be justice, fairness, and equality here, and the disposition of your case should not be dependent upon your paycheck, your ethnicity, or your area code. So I became a public defender. And what I do is I represent people who can't afford adequate representation. Now let me tell you a little bit about this. One of my first objectives is to get the grand larceny threshold increased from $200, which is the lowest in the nation, to at least $500. Now that should be a bipartisan issue because that is an economic issue. Now, a person who takes, what's $200? Your sunglasses, your cell phone, a jacket. So why is that a felony, but also someone who rapes, robs, and murders someone, you're in the same classification? That is an issue here in Virginia, and we need to make sure we change our archaic and draconian laws and update these things. Now, we talk about decriminalizing marijuana. Let me tell you a little bit about that. It's nothing more frustrating to see someone commit a nonviolent, low-level offense, status offense. What the real issue is maybe addiction, but we're not going to rehabilitate that person, we're going to incarcerate them. And not only incarcerate them, but release them in a worse situation that they were when they went into jail. That is not what we need to do here, especially with the opioid epidemic that's happening right now. We should have learned from the war on drugs, knowing that these things do not decrease the amount of crime and violence that happens on our streets. So we have to be smart on crime. Not only that, we're focusing on mental health and having maybe separate dockets for our people who suffer from mental illness and who's having mental health emergencies and just need to be diverted instead of incarcerated. So we need to learn from these issues. We need to fix our criminal justice system, and I'm definitely the person for the job. Thank you.
First of all, I think we need some clarity on just what happened with the felony, the mass rights restoration that the governor did and the Supreme Court actually ruled against. He, in a mass way, basically restored the rights of 206,000 felons, over which 40,000 individuals were violent offenders. Nearly a dozen of those individuals, so far listed, are having their rights restored when they did not meet the governor's criteria. Shouldn't even have been considered. 132 of Virginia's worst sexual offenders who were civilly committed to a facility in Nottoway were given their rights back. And as I mentioned, the Supreme Court overturned his ruling and he had to go back and do these things one by one, which is the way you should do it, case by case. The second point I would make is with respect to reform. I've been at the leading edge of this. I believe that we need to reform our reentry process. We need to look at young offenders that are in their last year of sentence and make sure they're in local facilities where they can tap into the resources to help them reintegrate successfully into their community. And so I've been working on that issue as chairman of the Public Safety Committee. The second thing that I've been working on, I feel very strongly about, is expungement reform. We have a lot of kids going around who have small violations on their records, maybe marijuana, maybe other things, that just stick with them for their whole career. I don't think that needs to happen. I think we need expungement reform and recognize that youngsters make mistakes and they shouldn't have to carry those rocks in their backpack for the rest of their lives. So that's something I've been working on, actually carried legislation for.
Right. So I am also a CASA child advocate. So I spent a lot of time with judges in Prince William County courts and Fauquier courts as well. So I've seen firsthand how many children of color are not given equal opportunity. So as a Democrat, I am against racial profiling and mass incarceration. I believe that we need more diversity on our judges in Prince William County and Fauquier County. By the way, we had one of our judges who retired a year ago, and Mr. Lingenfelter voted against to fill that position. So that position remained vacant because he refused to release money to fill that position that comes from the state. As far as we also need, one of the things that I believe we should believe is in having more guidance counselors in the schools. I have 4 children from different ages. My oldest is 25 and my youngest is 8 years old. I have my daughter who is graduating this year, from Osborne Park High School. I've seen how many guidance counselors we have lost throughout the years. The caseload in schools where 250 students per guidance counselor, nowadays is 500 per guidance counselor. Our guidance counselors have to do the job of social workers and psychologists as well. That's an excellent opportunity to provide help and support to students while they are in high school, but also by not having the enough amount of guidance counselors, because Mr. Lingenfelter have been defunded the public schools for the past 16 years, we are losing the opportunity to help our parents to become a support system for their children.
The next question goes first to Delegate Anderson, candidate of Yale after that, and candidate after that. The question is about education. What is your position on the funding of private schools with public state funds? What are the pros and the cons of doing so?
Well, Mr. Moderator, I think you're talking about charter schools and other similar initiatives. I support the principle of charter schools. Based on my study, based on conversations I've had with legislators from both parties, from virtually every other state, who are members with me of the National Conference of State Legislatures, it can work. Now, I'm in favor of approaching it in a way where we do not debit the public school systems, because I believe that the founders intended we have a durable, lasting system of public education readily available to children. I believe that there is room for above all education. I know that not everyone agrees with that, but I will tell you this. Hardly a week goes by that I'm not in a Prince William County public school. I am chairman of the Virginia Commission on Civics Education, and I get invited to talk about how a bill becomes a law, Virginia history, etc. And I hear from a large number of public school teachers that they have no problem whatsoever with the principle of charter schools, as long as it does not debit the public budget for schools. And so I would like to say one last thing, though, about education and education funding. I'm very proud of the fact that we on the House Appropriations Committee and the full House funded public education, K through 12, $18 million more than the governor requested. And for higher education, a subcommittee of appropriations on which I sit, we budgeted it $20 million more. My expectation, based on my discussion with my appropriations committee colleagues, is that we're going to do better in January, because we need to drive down classroom sizes and we need to search for more fair teacher compensation to keep teachers here in Prince William County.
Thank you. Well, for 18 years, I've been a part of the public school system. My son just graduated from Woodbridge Senior High School, attended Lake Ridge Elementary, Lake Ridge Middle, and then was able to graduate this year and now is attending Nova locally. So I'm really proud of that. But I've served in many capacities. Amongst my day job as a cyber specialist, I've been a volunteer, an activist for teachers in our community. I found that teachers are paid $10,000, up to $10,000 less than adjoining communities in Northern Virginia. That bothers me. As a PTO president, I watch teachers dig into their own pocket, paying for their own school supplies, or worrying about children that did not have the ability or capacity to provide their own school supplies. Teachers would dig into their own pocket because no child should be left without the resources they need to learn and have a thriving educational environment. The other thing is that teachers are paid $7,500 less than the national average. This also bothers me because our teachers and our talent need to stay within the Commonwealth and within Prince William County, and we need to compensate our teachers as such. Unfortunately, we disagree about charter schools. 95% of our children attend public schools and our tax dollars go. We need to work on the issues in our public school system here in Prince William and across the Commonwealth. We need to strengthen our schools and restore the funding that's been cut from them. Delegate Anderson, my opponent, once voted for a budget that cut $620 million out of the education budget. We talk about the Commonwealth leading the way for education and having a world-class education. Well, we need to strengthen our schools, provide our teachers with world-class pay, and our children with world-class resources so that they can pave the way for our future.
So as an adjunct professor at Northern Virginia Community College and a former substitute teacher, I know intimately about education. And so the answer to the question is a resounding no. I do not think that we should have charter schools. I don't believe in privatizing education here in Virginia. What we really need to focus on is increasing teacher salaries from the $7,500 that they're paid less than the national average. That's why we have hundreds of teacher openings in Prince William and Stafford every year, because teachers are taking their chemistry degree and going to make $80,000 somewhere else instead of remaining in the second district, giving our students a quality education and preparing them for the global economy. We can't say that we want to attract and retain top talent teachers and we're not paying them what they're worth. So that is something that I can do as your delegate to ensure that we increase teacher salaries and we don't make it contingent upon anything, the same way they did with state trooper pay and sheriff pay the last session. Not only that, but we need to have a conversation about fully funding the standards of quality and reworking the composite index for a formula that works and that can fund education. These are important conversations we need to talk about, not privatizing education to the detriment of our students. So we have to make them a priority. We can't say that educating them, our future generation, is important, and we're not doing these simple common sense things that can make that happen. And this will be my focus as your delegate in the 2nd District.
I'm very blessed to be married to a career school teacher who's here tonight, my wife Shelley. She was a kindergarten teacher, which I think is the toughest duty next to being an infantryman in the whole wide world. And I'm very proud of her. She has always been my best advisor on things education. You know, folks, let me tell you something. What's the purpose of education? The purpose of education is to help a child be as successful as they can be, as early in their lives as they can be. And we need to stop the bickering about whether it's a public school solution or a private school solution or a charter school solution or a homeschool solution. We need to stop the bickering and start the wickering. We need to wicker a basket together and realize that we need alternatives so that parents can decide what is best for their child. And this fiction that somehow Republicans are slashing the education budget is nonsense. Let me tell you the facts. The General Assembly has invested $1 billion in new money in the K-12 system since the Great Recession, when Tim Kaine just left office. He proposed an education budget that was actually lower than what Republicans passed. The General Assembly has funded four teacher pay raises, $134 million. And guess what? It's the localities that are the employers of the teachers. They are primarily responsible for salaries. And even then, the General Assembly has put up $138 million in salary increases. We've reduced from 22 to 17 the number of SOL tests, so we're doing more teaching and less testing. We've invested $31 million in school security in the wake of the Newtown tragedy. And in 2017, we sent back to localities $191.3 million, no strings attached, so the localities could make the best decisions for themselves. You know who led that effort? I led that effort. And so for me, I would tell you, you can always, say that Republicans are cutting education, but then, Elizabeth, there are the facts.
That's right, Mr. Lingenfelter, the facts. That's why you supported eliminating the Federal Department of Education a few years ago. So as far as education, I'm against charter schools. And the reason because charter schools equals no accountability. As a mother of 4 children that I've raised in the public school system, I do believe in public education. I believe that charter schools are independently managed and they don't go by the same regulations of the Virginia Department of Education. There is proven record that charter schools have high level of corruption and they are condemned for racial bias. I don't think that's the best choice for our students. There are so many local issues that we should address here locally. For example, we are providing public education with less money than we had 10 years ago. I don't know how the teachers are doing it, how schools are being able to provide the education that they are providing now with less money. Our schools are overcrowded. We don't have enough resources for special education. Our elementary schools only have 1 special education classroom per school. We need to reduce the amount of SOLs because our teachers don't want to teach to a test. They want to teach to learn. And it creates a lot of anxiety in the children and the teachers as well. We need to work on compensating our teachers fairly. It is not fair that our teachers are required the same qualifications, but they are less compensated than our neighboring localities like Fairfax County and Loudoun County. I would also like to advocate more resources to a school because, for example, we have funding for Virginia Preschool Initiative and we are not able to use that money. We only use 3% of that money because we don't have room in our schools to help our children.
I favor completely privatizing the public education system, or as I would call it, the socialized education system. And we need to completely abolish public education because the problem is the public schools are bureaucratic, they're inefficient, and it's a one-size-fits-all solution. If you live in a district, you have only one choice of school to go to. So what if your kid doesn't fit in at that school? What if he has needs that aren't accommodated by that school? It would be better to have education be completely privately funded, use the tax savings from getting rid of public education to fund private schooling and homeschooling. And I also think that we should get rid of compulsory education, because when we have students in schools who don't want to be there and whose families don't support them being there, they tend to be disruptive and they're not learning anyway. So they might as well just go straight into the workforce.
This next question goes first to candidate Yale. How would you promote health care coverage that is adequate, affordable, and accessible for all Virginians? 2 minutes.
Thank you. I just want to share a personal story. I was working at a gas station in Old Bridge Road. I won't promote the gas station, but I was there. And I was pregnant, and I had quite the difficulties, figuring out, my healthcare options because my employer did not offer healthcare to me. I had some challenges in the first couple months, constantly going back and forth to visit the doctors, and did not have an option. Making $7.25 an hour, it was really hard to figure out how I was going to pay for these expensive medical bills, and I was at a high-risk pregnancy. After I found out that I was able to stabilize myself and eventually have my son, he was also born with some medical challenges. He was born with juvenile diabetes, he was born with jaundice, he was born with some respiratory issues, and at the time of giving birth to my son, I almost died twice, and almost lost my child in that same instance. I'm grateful for Medicaid. It was life-saving. I believe that Medicaid is a right, not a privilege. Today, I'm proud that my son has graduated from high school. And I know that my story is, one of many stories within the Commonwealth. We have an opportunity to expand Medicaid to over 400,000 Virginians, giving them these life-saving health care that they need. We have the opportunity to give 12,000 constituents here in Prince William Medicaid. I was really proud this June to see my son walk across the stage and graduate, because without Medicaid, he might not have been here. Medicaid also offered other options for me to become a successful working adult. I was able to then move on to an employer that provided me the resources I need. But I will tell you this, when we have folks in the General Assembly voting against life-saving legislation, I take it personal. I take it personal because there's people out there that are much worse than I was in my circumstance. There's families that need to and continue to need and to be supported by affordable health care, and we need to provide them. This is a humanitarian issue. It should not be politicized. And so for that, I would work towards, sir, there you went, you're over there now, work towards expanding Medicaid and within the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Okay, so who would agree that being able to go to your doctor when need be is a good thing? I think we can all agree upon that, right? I don't think this is a Republican issue, a Democratic issue. Thank you. I think this is a people issue. And so we have already paid for the expansion of Medicaid here in Virginia. That's what a lot of people don't know. And bringing Medicaid to Virginia would equal 30,000 new jobs, healthcare related jobs with insurance and benefits. So this is something that we could use here. The revenue generated by expanding Medicaid is in the millions. Not only that, but we have foregone $5 billion by not expanding Medicaid here in Virginia. Medicaid helps veterans, the elderly, pregnant women, children, the disabled. How can we say no to 400,000 people who need access to quality health care? You should not have to make a decision about paying your mortgage or going to the emergency room. And these are the decisions that people are making every single day that we do not expand Medicaid. People are dying. People are dying because of partisan politics and obstructionism, and it must stop. Healthcare is a great thing. It has been expanded to 31 states, including DC. The time is now. We have to pass Medicaid expansion so people can afford to go to see a doctor. It's that simple. Thank you.
I think your question was, what would we do to design a better system? Is that the point you were making?
Let me repeat the question.
Thanks.
I have a request to repeat the question, which makes sense. It's a long time sometimes between when you get to answer after you've heard the question. How would you promote health care coverage that is adequate, affordable, and accessible for all Virginians?
That's a really good question, and let me give you some facts, and then I'll tell you what what's this?
Different microphone.
Different microphone.
Why don't you turn that one off? Thank you. I know. Sorry about this. Pick one that works, not that one.
Okay. I guess the solution is a new microphone. Okay. So a couple of things that I think need to be said. First of all, none of us are running for Congress, thank goodness. But I think the Congress needs to get off their cans and get the problem fixed. And they need to pass a true reform and do it right. And I'll talk a little bit about what I think that might look like. The existing Medicaid program is broken. The rising Medicaid costs continue to eat in our funding. It's the largest growing slice of Virginia's budget. It is crowding out education. It is crowding out higher education, public safety. Everything else in the budget is getting crowded out by the growth in Medicaid. It could cost as much as $2 billion a year in Virginia, 530 out of our budget. You got to find a place to afford that. If you're going to cut $560 million out of Virginia's budget for Medicaid expansion, where are you going to cut? Or what are you going to do? Whose taxes are you going to raise? We're facing a $20 trillion deficit in Washington. We have to have a reform that makes sense. Now, under the Obama administration, they took the ACA approach. And what they did is they took hundreds of millions of dollars out of Medicare and they put it in Medicaid. What really needs to happen is we need to go back and fix the Medicare system and secure it for the people it was designed to help. We need to refocus Medicaid on the vulnerable population that it's designed to help. And in between, we need common sense reform. It is lunacy that you can't buy a health insurance policy across state lines. It makes no sense whatsoever. And the Congress can fix this problem. And they need to fix the problem. But I would say this, you've also got to deal with the pharmaceutical issue. It is cost prohibitive, it is destroying the system, and you've got to deal with the legal profession as well, because tort reform is killing the medical profession. I mean, without tort reform, we're killing the medical profession. We've got to get out of the courts, and we need to get people the health care they need.
Wow. I will support Medicaid expansion. There are so many reasons. I've been working in the human services field for so many years, and I've seen people dying for not having health insurance. Currently, in the state of Virginia, we offer Medicaid for poor people who are children, pregnant mothers, people who have disabilities, and also for retired people who live under the poverty guideline. We're talking about poor people. When we talk about Medicaid expansion, we're talking about offer health insurance to 400,000 Virginians, working Virginians who live under poverty, from which 1,300 live in the 31st district. Expanding Medicaid is not only the right thing to do, but it also makes physical sense. Under Obamacare, we could bring to Virginia our federal tax dollars, the federal tax dollars that you and I pay that are going to other states that are offering Medicaid for all. We could have in Virginia $12 billion now if we were to approve Medicaid. And I believe that as a delegate, the Virginia Assembly should work to block the repeal and replace of Obamacare. I'm not saying it was the best program, but it was the best in the absence of anything. For many people who is my age around here, we never had the program as such that help 650,000 Virginians with pre-existing conditions to have insurance. And I would agree with Mr. Lingenfelter that we do need to regulate drug prices. But we need to start by not taking donations to our campaigns from those organizations. So we can regulate the prices, because my loyalty is not going to be bought by any type of corporations. I also believe that we have to create an incentive for employers who offer healthcare insurance to their employees.
The problem with subsidizing healthcare is that it's just going to cause the costs to spiral more out of control. As we subsidize it, the costs will continue to go up and we'll have to subsidize it more. So it's better to just cut it all off, get rid of all socialized healthcare. It's bureaucratic. It's getting to the point now where doctors and hospitals seem like they're spending more time and money on paperwork than on actually treating the patients. What we need to do something about the corrupt pharmaceutical industry, which is seeking to gouge the taxpayers by having the taxpayers be on the hook for medications. We should abolish drug patents and patents on medical devices, because although people say this spurs innovation, it actually gets in the way of innovation, because when there's a patent on, say, a medical device, that gets in the way of any other company trying to have derivative works and improve on that device. So it actually impedes progress. We also should just abolish the FDA, get rid of the whole drug approval process, and have independent bodies certify drugs, and let the consumer take these medicines at their own risk if they wish. Let the individual choose.
Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you. The issue of Medicaid expansion, I voted consistently to not expand Medicaid in Virginia because it is bad fiscal policy. And let me explain to you why. But first, let me cut to the chase and answer the question, which is what I would propose in lieu of. We follow on the Appropriations Committee in the House of Delegates and in the broader General Assembly a policy of funding the health care safety net. Since 2014, we funded that at $200 million. And the reason we have is to ensure that we take care of mental health needs, behavioral health, substance abuse, and of course ID and DD waivers, which are woefully underfunded. We only funded about 160 some, and I believe that we need to fund, and I, along with Speaker Designate Kirk Cox, I've been very loud about this. We need to fund more DD/ID waivers, probably at the several thousand level, very expensive, but they're truly needed. I've been into literally dozens and dozens of homes since I got home from the General Assembly where people are on the ID, DD waiting list. So I am highly in favor of continuing to fund the healthcare safety net. In terms of expanding Medicaid, here's what's going to happen in January when we go back and work the budget. Already, unexpanded Medicaid consumes 23% of the state budget. Since 2009, when I came into the General Assembly, or rather 2010, it has doubled in cost, unexpanded Medicaid, to where it now costs it has increased by $1.8 billion. In January, we will re-baseline Medicaid. That is going to take an additional $300 million. I hear it at the doors continually, horror stories about skyrocketing payments for health care insurance, skyrocketing deductibles, the loss of their plans. And so as a result, I am highly in favor of continuing the health care safety net that we now employ in Virginia.
This question goes first to candidate Foy. What is your position on police training and discipline after some of the incidents around the country involving the shooting of unarmed citizens?
So I think that we can all agree that there may have been an issue with police response as far as Charlottesville go. I I think that there have been a deficit in response to or in training issues with a lot of the, I guess you could say, police on community violence that's happened recently. I think it's a brand of training. I also support wearing of police cameras. I think that in body cams, I think that improves transparency. I think it improves accountability. And I think it's definitely a training issue. We have to fix the response of a lot of our law enforcement officers. I've worked directly with them as a magistrate. I work with them also as a public defender on a daily basis. For example, in Virginia, the school to prison pipeline, we are #1. We are #1 in the country for the school to prison pipeline, and that is a problem. Now that goes back to training, resource officers, retraining them that children who are maybe disorderly or disobedient in school, the default should not be arrest, right? It should be diversion. It should be speaking to a counselor. It needs to be getting wraparound services involved, parents involved. So when we look at things such as these type of reactions, we know that it's a training issue, and that's something that I'm supportive of. Not only in schools, but also law enforcement officers in our communities. I support community policing and retraining to understand that, hey, sometimes people are in crises. Being able to identify that and divert people instead of just incarcerating them. Being able to have de-escalation skills to bring things down instead of escalating them up and then having to result in some type of murder, death, or violence. So these are things that I promote and advocate for. Thank you.
Well, I am very blessed to be the chairman of the Public Safety Committee, so I interact with the Virginia State Police and our sheriffs and deputy sheriffs in Virginia quite frequently. And I think in some quarters it's very popular to criticize law enforcement that somehow they are insensitive or that they are not observing the best techniques that they could in de-escalation and other issues. And I can tell you, having talked to a lot of sheriffs and a lot of state troopers, they are very concerned about making sure that the de-escalation piece happens correctly. They're very cautious about it. There's always going to be a situation where possibly a law enforcement officer takes a measure or a step that's wrong. And I have to say that my experience in Virginia over 16 years is law enforcement is very good about disciplining themselves. My concern, quite frankly, in recent years is how much demonization is going on with respect to law enforcement. These folks get up every morning, they go out, they put on their uniforms, they get in their cars, and they're out there to protect us. They risk their lives for us every single day. And I have tremendous respect for them. That's why I'm very concerned about the tone and the attitude some folks have toward law enforcement. I think ultimately what we have to do as a community is open the lines of communication. Listen to each other. Stop talking at each other. And where there are issues, let's try to resolve them. But I think the police are doing a great job. And I support them 100%.
The Virginia State Police, so as the Association of Chief Polices in Virginia, support giving license to undocumented immigrants. And the reason is because there is an issue of safety. Another 30 stakeholders also support that bill. And actually, that bill was presented by a Republican delegate in the House of Delegates. And then it was transferred to the State Senate House and supported by Mr. Scott Sorrell. I believe that we need to provide training in cultural competence to our law enforcement officials, so they should be knowledgeable of all the cultures and the sensitiveness of cultures as well. Last Sunday, I was happy to see in an event the diversity on the police officers now in Prince William County, and I commended those efforts to the Chief of Police. However, for those police that don't behave according to regulations, I do support the enforcement of the law. They should be punished. I also would like to provide more mental health training, like crisis intervention, that there is a partnership in between law enforcement, sheriff police, and mental health and the community services board, that when they address a person that they are gonna arrest, they have to be sensitive of mental health issues that our citizens are going through and treat them differently.
I think the cause of a lot of police misconduct is that it arises out of the drug war, because the nature of the drug war is that the police have to snoop on the citizens and invade their privacy in ways that they wouldn't have to do if they were enforcing laws against non-consensual crimes. The drug war causes more violence by sending money into organized crime, and it's ruining young people's lives, because there are a lot of young people out there who have no other negative interactions with the police other than because they use illegal drugs. So I think if we end the drug war, legalize all drugs, that will solve that issue of a lot of these interactions that lead to violence between the police and the individual. I think with regard to police shootings, things like that, one possible solution is to privatize police. There have been some towns, like Reminderville, Ohio, where they privatized their entire police force, and they reduced their costs down from $180,000 a year to $90,000, and their response time from 45 minutes to 6 minutes. What this does when you privatize the police is that they're no longer shielded by sovereign immunity from lawsuits when they shoot somebody. And if they are engaged in misconduct, their reputation suffers, which harms their ability to get future contracts. So the private sector can create incentives for better behavior on the part of the police.
Can you state the question one more time to make sure I cut to the chase?
What is your position on police training and discipline after shooting of unarmed citizens?
Having spent a lot of years in a military uniform, and a lot of you out there have also, I think you will agree that those who serve our country in uniform, as well as those who serve locally in uniform, police officers, law enforcement, first responders, fire and rescue, all of whom are badged and sworn to serve and protect, there is a common DNA thread that joins military personnel and those who serve in our local communities. And so those organizations must be trained, manned, equipped, disciplined, and with a rule set that guides their activities. For those rare police officers, those rare law enforcement personnel who depart from established protocols, of course they should be held accountable, as if myself or any of you who wore a military uniform were to depart from standards of military conduct. That said, my only frame of reference is here in Prince William County, and I cannot speak more highly than I possibly can about the professionalism and the devotion of the Prince William County Police Department and the Prince William County Sheriff's Department. I have been especially impressed with Chief Barry Bernard. He has done active community policing. He has frequent interactions with his conversations with the chief meetings out in the community. He has moved in the direction of body cameras. He has moved in the direction of recruiting to bring in more minorities into the police force. And I have seen his interactions, his and those of his officers, on National Night Out, where I ride around the county with the chief, to large community gatherings where they are warmly received annually or semi-annually, I believe, every 2 years. The climate survey that is done in the community establishes that at the 90 percentile level, all demographics in the county support our police, and I think it's because of proactive leadership on their part. I'll close with this. I traded text messages today with Mayor LeVar Stoney of Richmond and complimented him for taking leadership of those protests at the Lee statue on Monument Avenue. He said, if anyone comes here burning a torch or obscuring their face with a mask, they will not be asked to stop. They will be arrested. And I told him, when in a position of leadership, you led.
Good evening. I also, a lot of us agree on some of the approaches, such as we talk about training and resources for our officers to including body cams for transparency. Also, I support resources allocated for training for unique circumstances, how to engage our community members maybe with challenges with mental health issues. And I'm being able to identify those challenges or circumstances. Also, resources for community involvement, meaning that our officers should be engaged in our community and a part of our community. I agree with you, Delegate Anderson, that we have a great representation of that. Our officers are constantly in contact with our community members and a part of them, or that engagement. But I think there should be funding for that involvement, that the officers should represent the communities that they represent. It's important to have those ties and those connections and those conversations, especially with challenges that we may have in certain communities and demographics. For that, I'm also proud to say, I'm getting the flag. I'm also proud to say I have a cousin who was recently indoctrinated into the Prince William County Police Department. He is, I'm not sure if he's on the beat yet, but I am proud that he is now wearing the uniform and representing such a great county that we live in. Thank you.
That concludes our questions. In a moment, we'll go to the candidates for 2-minute closing statements in the reverse order. So that will be Foy, Ayala, Anderson, Larson, Guzman, Lingenfelter. Before, though, we turn it over, I want to ask you to once again give everyone here a round of applause. One of the pleasures of moderating local House of Delegate debates is that the candidates are often, they come here and they treat the citizens with respect. They have serious answers to serious questions. And also one of the other things is that the public takes this very seriously as well. We had good questions from the public as well as the NAACP and the Prince William County Committee of 100. And so you should all give yourselves a round of applause for taking the job of being citizens here. And so now I will remove the restriction on applause after remarks. Each candidate can get applause after their closing statements. We turn first to candidate Foy, 2 minutes. You want to take it? Okay.
All right, so just to follow up on the last question I had, I do want to say that I support Prince William County Police and Stafford Police and look forward to working in conjunction with them. I believe in the duties of law enforcement and and I admire the way that they put their life on the line on a daily basis. But with that said, first I want to thank you all. I'm so grateful to take questions from people regarding the second district, and you all are so here and involved. And as the only candidate from the second district, I hope I have all of your votes. So that would be great. Now, being one of the first females and African-American females from Virginia Military Institute, let me tell you what that means. That means I know how to get things done. That means I know how to plan and execute. I know that when there's a mission or a goal, that I have to work with people who may not want to work with me, who may not want to see me there. We may not agree on any level. However, when something needs to get done, we grind down and we get it done. And that's what I'm going to do. I know people are tired of the partisan politics and the obstructionism, and we need to move forward to get things done in Virginia, and that's what I'm looking forward to do as a delegate from the 2nd District. Now, a vote for Jennifer Carroll Foy on November 7th is a vote to expand Medicaid to the 400,000 Virginians who don't have access to quality health care. It is a vote to trust women to make decisions regarding their own bodies and reproductive health care and their families. It is a vote to increase teachers' salaries, where they're paid $7,500 less than the national average, to put quality teachers in the classroom and get teachers to return to the teaching profession. And it's to improve transportation in Prince William and Stafford, because none of us want to spend 2 hours to go 20 miles in Virginia. So I'm excited to be the candidate. I look forward to your vote. Please vote, donate, volunteer, exercise your voice, join the democracy. It works best when we are all a part of it. And I am excited to be a candidate, and this election will be the flame that sparks the fire to change Virginia. Thank you.
Man, I have to follow that up. Well, what Jennifer said. No, I sincerely appreciate the opportunity from the Prince William County NAACP, League of Women Voters, and Committee of 100, and all of you who've taken your time out of this Friday night. I just want to let you know that I'm missing pizza night with my family. No, I'm just joking. But it is a long-standing tradition that we have, but I'm appreciative of being here and having the opportunity to present my platform and share with you my visions and ideals for the 51st District. I've run my campaign and will run my office, if luckily to be elected, on ensuring that the constituents of the 51st District are heard and represented equally and fairly in Richmond. Making sure that women's right to choose remains the law of the land in the Commonwealth. I will work also to expand Medicaid to the 12,000 constituents in Prince William County and the over 1,300 that live right in the 51st District. I will bring state and local voices together so we can develop and implement long-term plans for our terrible traffic crisis and congestion. And also I will work for our teachers. They are, to me, the foundation of our communities that help our children grow and provide them the resources that they need so that they can be successful and be a part of this community. I sincerely appreciate this opportunity. Everybody who I know in this room or have just met hopefully understands that I am passionate about serving this community. And for the folks that I've gotten to know and have helped me to advocate so much for women's rights, for raising the minimum wage, for protecting a woman's right to choose, I certainly appreciate your time, your efforts, and your energy as you've joined me on this campaign, helping me knock doors, helping me talk to voters. And we really need a change in leadership this year. And as Jennifer said, your voice needs to be represented at the ballot box this November 7th. Thank you.
Let me conclude this evening by thanking the sponsoring organizations. Thank you so much for putting this event on. This is a vital element of American and Virginian democracy, how we operate in a constitutional republic. And Dr. Farnsworth, thank you for being here and for moderating these discussions. For the last 8 years, Ruth and I and a small team of people have knocked on doors that are unimaginable in terms of numbers. I don't think there's anyone that can match the numbers we have knocked, simply because this is a people business and we are people. And so it has been a great blessing to be at these doors. I look out in the audience and I see people that I don't know. I'm looking at you back there and you there and you there. I've knocked on your door. I don't remember your name now, but I've knocked on your door. I've been in so many living rooms, at so many kitchen tables where family decisions are made every day. I served my country for 30 years. It has been a rare privilege to serve our Commonwealth for 8 years, and I wish to continue to do the same thing. At the doors, in the homes, I have listened to what our folks have had to say. And I want to take that back to Richmond and continue to work there. This is definitely a contrast election. On one hand, you have someone who has been as deeply engaged as a human being can be engaged in the community matters of this community. On the other hand, and I'll just simply leave it at this, I didn't know my competitor. She's not my opponent. She's not my enemy. She's simply my competitor in the business sense. I had never heard of her, and to be quite frank, I have been the East Coast distributor of being engaged in this community across the spectrum. And so with that, thanks to all of you for being here tonight. God bless all of you. Ruth and I have lived in a dozen communities over the space of our military careers, and there is no place like Prince William County.
The question is sometimes asked, why should I vote for a libertarian candidate? The reason is that neither of the two major parties are nominating candidates with a libertarian philosophy or agenda. And for example, in the 31st District, the Democrats have nominated a progressive, and the Republicans have nominated a moderate conservative. But leftist progressivism, when followed to its logical conclusions, leads to the same kind of economic chaos we see in countries like Venezuela. And this is not a time for moderate half measures when it comes to curtailing the role of the state. Rather, this is a time for drastic action to restore individual liberty and defend capitalism from those who would destroy it. When you vote libertarian, you're making a long-term investment in building a movement. It encourages more libertarian candidates to run for office. It attracts media attention to their campaigns, and it makes it easier to make a case for why they should have access to the ballot. The cause of liberty needs your help this November. So I encourage you, if you're dissatisfied with the status quo, to join me in fighting back against the bipartisan establishment and vote libertarian.
Well, I would like to first thank you, the NAACP, the Committee of 100, and the League of Women Voters for organizing this event, as well as everyone here in this room for making the time to come this evening to know more about your candidates. Today, October 6th, marks a year that I've been running for office. I would like to thank my supporters who elected me to become the Democratic nominee in the most democratic way possible through a primary. I also would like to thank my volunteers and my staff, because my campaign would not be where it is today without your support. Thank you so much. For 16 years, we have a delegate that has been representing us, but he represents only 16% of the voting population. I will ask you a few questions. Do you believe that our public schools gotten any better within the last 16 years? Do you feel like our transportation system has gotten any better within the last 16 years?
No.
Do you feel safer in Prince William County now? Do you feel safer now after 16 years in Prince William County?
No.
Well, if your answers are no, you would agree with me that we are ready for change.
Yes.
We believe that 16 years is enough. In 32 days, you will have the opportunity to bring change to the Virginia Assembly. My commitment will be to work as hard as I've been working for the past years. I want to be the voice of those children who do not have access to early childhood education, and I believe that any child in this country should have the opportunity to succeed. I want to be the voice of those veterans that do not have systems in place so they can transfer their skills to the civilian world. I want to be the voice of those people who do not see their children because they have to have 3 jobs to make ends meet. I will ask you today for your support, not only to bring better, but also diverse representation. With your support, you are going to elect more women in the House of Delegates. You're going to bring a social worker and a second union member to the House of Delegates, and you will elect the first Hispanic female in the Virginia Assembly.
I want to thank everyone for being here tonight and listening to us in a very civil way, having a discourse in our community. I spent 28 years in the U.S. Army defending this nation. For me, it was the highest honor of my life. Defending our Constitution in war and in peace. I didn't have a plan to be in politics, but I wound up getting into it And in the 16 years that I have been your delegate, I have worked very hard to keep my promises and to focus on the things that I think are important: faith, family, and freedom. This last week, I don't think there was a person in this room who could not have been devastated by what they saw in Las Vegas. And I'm going to tell you right now, there is a crisis in this country. And that crisis is a crisis of character and virtue. If you think you can legislate your way out of the hate and out of what we have seen this week, you're wrong. Our founders understood freedom requires virtue. Virtue requires faith of some sort. And faith of any sort requires freedom to thrive in the American context. That's what's been important to me. We're citizen legislators. We're not like congressmen. We're not down in Richmond every day of the week. We're there to pass legislation and to support the Constitution and come back and live under the same laws we write for everybody else. But I'm here to tell you the one law we can never pass is the law to change a heart. And I think this country needs to wake up, folks, and have some heart surgery. Good night. God bless you. See you on the campaign trail.
I have one announcement. There will be a Virginia Lieutenant Governor Candidates Forum on Tuesday, October 24th at 7 p.m. at Colgan High School. That's at 1383